Russia is openly mocking President Trump as fuel prices skyrocket across the United States, seizing on Americans' growing frustration at the pump to question his leadership and the effectiveness of his energy policies. Putin's government is loudly flaunting that Russia faces no fuel crisis, drawing a sharp contrast with rising oil and gasoline costs in the US and using this narrative to project stability at home while Americans' economic pain keeps growing. Russia presents itself as relatively safe and shielded while the shutdown in the Strait of Hormuz throws global energy markets into chaos, highlighting how turmoil elsewhere is battering other economies far more than Moscow's. Russia said on May 21 that its domestic motor fuel market remains stable and firmly under control, signaling that Moscow does not foresee shortages or major disruptions despite volatility in global energy prices. This assurance came as the country's fuel industry prepares to handle a seasonal increase in demand, with officials suggesting that existing production and supply systems are ready to cope with the upcoming surge in consumption. The Russian Energy Ministry said, and I quote, "At present, the domestic market is sufficiently supplied with inventories of light petroleum products, logistics infrastructure is functioning steadily, and no disruptions in regional supplies have been recorded. Motor fuel supplies to agricultural producers are being carried out as normal, regional requests are being fully satisfied. No fuel shortages for seasonal field work are being observed." Unquote. More focus is now being put on meeting the fuel needs of Russia's agricultural sector, ensuring farmers have enough supplies for planting, harvesting, and other critical seasonal work. Energy stability is reportedly being supported by a series of measures adopted by the government, aimed at keeping domestic supplies steady and shielding the internal market from external price shocks. A temporary ban on gasoline exports remains in force, according to Russian state media, helping to prioritize domestic consumption over foreign sales during this sensitive period. There are also restrictions on diesel fuel exports by non-producers, limiting who can ship fuel abroad and further tightening control over how much product leaves the country. On May 20th, only 23,270 metric tons of gasoline were sold on the domestic market, the lowest daily figure recorded for the entire 2023 to 2026 period and a sign of constrained trading activity. From January to May 20th, a total of 3.654 million metric tons of gasoline had been sold, representing a year-on-year decline of 8.8% and indicating reduced volumes compared to the same period last year. Fuel costs in the United States are sitting near multi-year highs, according to a Reuters report on May 21, piling additional financial pressure on households and businesses already grappling with broader economic uncertainty. Average U.S. retail gasoline prices have been hovering above $4.50 per gallon since early May, Reuters noted, signaling a sustained period of elevated costs rather than a brief price spike. Overall U.S. fuel prices are now about 45% higher than the levels seen before the United States and Israel attacked Iran in February, underscoring how the conflict has fed directly into energy inflation. Both the US and Iran have imposed competing blockades in the Strait of Hormuz, a critical global oil trade route, turning the waterway into a focal point of geopolitical tension and supply disruption. This dual closure of the Strait of Hormuz has helped drive fuel prices skyward across the globe, as traders and governments scramble to secure alternative supplies and reroute shipments around the choke point. Amid talk that fighting with Iran could resume, senior U.S. Navy leaders are now openly admitting they cannot sustain current costs without painful cuts elsewhere. The service's operations chief says the 2026 budget was written before Epic Fury was on the table, meaning this entire Iran campaign is being funded off a plan that never anticipated a major Gulf War. Admiral Daryl Caudle describes the Navy as burning bright in the Middle East, but warns that every extra patrol and strike comes at a steep operational cost that is now starting to bite. He says the fleet is rapidly depleting fuel budgets, maintenance money, stocks of smart weapons, and the finite flight hours left on jets and helicopters scheduled for overhaul. Caudle warns that without extra cash from Congress, the Navy will have to start slashing training cycles and routine operations by July, gutting readiness to keep the Iran front man. His warning comes in the wake of U.S.-Israeli operations that began on February 28, a campaign that suddenly turned the Gulf into a 24/7 theater for carriers, destroyers, and patrol aircraft. That high-intensity phase lasted 39 days before an April 8 ceasefire understanding, but the Navy's bills, and the strain on crews and hardware, have only kept mounting since. Caudle says, and I quote, "The fiscal 2026 budget didn't bake in Operation Epic Fury. You see a large Navy force in the Middle East. So we're burning bright. But it does come at cost, and it comes at operational costs. To have the funds necessary to continue the war effort, which is quickly racking up fuel costs, operating hours, maintenance dollars, and munitions. I do fear that I'll have to start making decisions in the July time frame. My record recruiting is going to be thwarted without additional funding to PCS to those individuals from boot camp and to pay enlistment and re-enlistment bonuses." Unquote. Months of non-stop missions around Iran have heavily drained maintenance accounts, forcing commanders to delay repairs and push aging hulls harder than planners ever intended. Caudle says the Navy may even have to pause permanent change of station moves for 12,000 to 15,000 sailors, freezing careers and family plans to save money for operations. He also warns that enlistment and re-enlistment bonuses could be delayed or reduced, undercutting recruitment just when the service needs fresh crews most. Extended deployments off Iran have already created logistics problems, with some ships reporting shortages of fresh food, spare parts, and other basics as rotations drag on. Reports from the fleet suggest morale is suffering and mechanical faults are rising, as overworked sailors and stretched maintenance cycles collide under punishing schedules.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the US will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HD videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.